sometimes people just need to think about it a little differently. They just need to shift how they think. And that's what's happening a lot with student behavior issues is they often think of, gosh, just fix this kid, get them out of my classroom and bring them back when they're better or when they're going to function better. And really it's about how do we capture the need of that kid?
Welcome to the Unconventional Leadership Podcast, where we help you unlock your potential as a leader. Thank you for joining us this week on the Unconventional Leadership Podcast. I have the distinct pleasure today to be in the studio and have the opportunity to introduce some of our listeners to the great Charle Peck, who's recently joined our faculty, and we're bringing some amazing products to life that you're going to learn about today. Charle, thank you so much for being here with us.
My absolute pleasure.
Charle, your background has been in the education space. And for those listening, you may say, one of the things that I do, I follow the Unconventional Leadership Podcast because I want to be an unconventional leader in the classroom, in our school building, in our school district. We know there are over 130 different school districts that follow our products, that have utilized our self-care survey, that have utilized our leadership courses, but we hear you and we see you there, which is part of what led Charle and I being introduced to one another because of the great work you do. So Charle, can you share with me a little bit of your background from the classroom and then also into the therapy and then mental health well-being space that you're so passionate about?
Yeah, it's funny because it's a story that people don't always hear about, but I've been in education for over 20 years, K through 12. I started off in elementary, but ended up teaching high school for 18 years. Yes. And so when I taught, I got to teach curriculum around mental health and mental illness and really societal issues and problems that we needed to understand how to solve. So it prompted so much conversation, Mike, with our kids, the students, these teenagers who were just so inquisitive, but also had a lot of problems. And so I couldn't understand why we had so many issues with mental health among our teens because we had teachers surrounding them that just loved them and cared about them so much. So I didn't understand it. And so when I was on the principal route, I had done some leadership. That's where I thought I was headed. I stopped and I thought, what am I really trying to do here? How do I reach more kids? And so I went and got my Master of Social Work degree to understand structurally what was going on. And then ultimately became a clinical therapist working with kids in crisis, families. And now I work as a school-based therapist just a couple days a week. That's all I have time for. Trust me, I wish I could do more. But that's led me to this work.
Yeah. So the listening and watching and seeing and experiencing your surrounding, you felt a prompting.
Yes.
To something isn't going as well as we all hope.
Yeah.
And I'm going to create it created a response in you to go back and get your master's degree. But it also had created some career pivots and shifts for you to want to serve that market so well. Mm-hmm. What has that research and that education and that experience brought you to today, or let's say the last 5 years?
You know what? It really is about a message of hope. I mean, that is what was lacking, is that message of hope. But also people are missing skills and tools and strategies. They just don't know what to do in this industry. They don't know how to help and they don't know how to be hopeful. And to me, giving that clarity is what I get to do as a keynote speaker all around the world, talking with people who are losing hope in our system. And so I want them to capture that and hold on to it and say, listen, we got you. Like we can do this. We can do this together. One person at a time, because we cannot wait for this system to change. It takes too long. There's political and social climates that just have a negative influence sometimes and keep us from looking for change. And so oftentimes we want to step out of the system, but that would be detrimental because we have so many people who care about kids in the system. So that's who we need to elevate. That's exactly what we need to do is target them, give that message of hope and equip them.
It's for those who have followed our journey and for those school districts that might be tuning into this episode because you follow the Unconventional Leadership Podcast and that's what brought us together. I had the opportunity to write about one of my teachers, and we talk about teachers on these episodes when I ask leaders, who helped you find that voice? Who was the individual who tucked you under their wing to protect, but also then pushed you out of the nest because they believed in you. Oftentimes, it's a teacher, it's an educator. For me, it was several teachers, but one in particular, which was Miss Joan Gregory, history teacher at Holmes High School, who saw something in me that, to be frank, I definitely didn't notice in myself. And she was hard on all of us, right? For my friends that watch this, you would go, yeah, she was hard on all of us, Mike. It wasn't just you, right? She wasn't just telling you you're special and there's something in you that I believe. She was telling probably every single student who walked into her classroom, right? Because that's who she is and how she believed in all of us. But so oftentimes teachers are what change our lives, what change our trajectory. And those listening, I'd love to hear you to share in the comments and notes. Yep, it was Mrs. Smith. It was Mr. Hensley. It was that. We hear stories countlessly on our episodes of leaders that we're interviewing and interacting with. And therefore, that's part of why this is so important. Because if we believe we have the ability to unlock human potential, we have to identify all of these systems and really the user base that shows up on our doorstep that is asking for us to serve them. And one of those is the education space. So as you've been on your journey, you speak nationally, you speak at incredible conferences with school boards, with superintendents, with teachers, with innovators in the education space, school therapists, school counselors, et cetera. What are some of the themes that you're being asked to speak on to those audiences? And let's just go maybe we'll share 3 of them, but go one at a time.
Okay. The very first one is about the chaotic system that we live and work in education. I mean, we're a community of people in education. It's not just students. It's not just staff. It's parents, caregivers. Anybody in the community is a part of the school system. So we talk about the breakdown, how it feels so chaotic. And so how do we get out of that system? How do we create calm from chaos? So that is one of the first things that people like to hear about. And that depends on the audience. And I can speak to any audience about that because anybody is in that system. And that's one of the things we do is we show this graphic of where are you right now in the chaos of school mental health or youth mental health. But I always say school mental health, Mike, because it's not just the students who are struggling. It's not. So that leads to the next topic is we talk about staff mental health. We talk about student and staff mental health. So how do we address that? And that always leads to the next topic, which is anxiety. I mean, when I'm working with kids, I diagnose anxiety so frequently because anxiety itself is not a disorder. Let's be really clear about that. But they meet the criteria so frequently. And these are the kids, by the time they see me in the school setting, in a therapeutic setting, they're really struggling. They don't know what to do. But how many people are walking around in our building having the same symptoms that are not being addressed? And so we are sending a message to teachers, just deal with it, be resilient, handle the demands that are put upon you and be professional. And yes, we need to be professional, but we also need to be equipped. I mean, anxiety is one of the most, it's the easiest to treat, to be honest, in mental health. It is just there's such great evidence-based practice that we can use to help people treat it, but they need to know where it's coming from and that it's okay. It's okay that you've got this going on. And also part of it, Mike, is the education. Well, what's different between anxiety and anxiety disorder? And then what is different between anxiety and stress? What is that relationship? So a lot of it is educating how the brain and body work together and how stress kind of infiltrates our body and shows up in this reactive way. So those are typically the topics, the chaos, teacher mental health and wellness, and also anxiety and avoidance. There are more, but those are really top ones that I see all the time in this requested.
And is it geographic? Is that something because your flight schedule, your travel schedule, you're a renowned speaker in this space. So I'm always impressed when I hear like, okay, I'm in Seattle this week, in New York or New Jersey this week, and in Oklahoma and Nebraska. Do you feel any geographic themes or not?
No. I mean, no. And that's why there's such a high demand. That's why the books that we've been writing, they cater to everybody in the education space, K through 12.
No matter where you're located, no matter what
No
kind of
matter
school.
where we are, no matter what school, no matter if it's a charter school, a private school, a public school. I mean, it's everywhere. It's in every household. It's in every family system. It's spilling into the community. It's spilling in every system that we're a part of in society. That's why it feels so big. And that's why I constantly say, listen, there still is hope here because you as an individual have a lot of control over your own path. And so don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on the system. We need you in this system. And the kids need you.
Yeah. And the relatability of the words anxiety and stress for our audience are all something we all feel and we all have, right? That could be day over day, could be week over week, could be quarter over quarter, could be year over year. Walk us through a little bit around a tad bit of solution. If I'm sitting here listening saying, oh, I really hope Charlie shares a little bit more about how to manage my anxiety and a little bit more on how I deal with stress and what I can do different today, walking out of this conversation to show up differently this afternoon or tomorrow.
Yeah. It's always trying to find calm. And the way we do that is to slow down and quiet the mind. And so we can't do any of that unless we are so mindful and aware of what we're doing. So here's what I'm going to go back to the geographical thing here. There are some states that I can't say SEL. And SEL, a lot of people are saying, what is that? That is social emotional learning. We're teaching advisory classes. If that's familiar to you, then that's SEL. We're teaching kids skills to help them. Okay. But the problem there is we've been doing that since 1994, over 30 years. And what happens is we're teaching them skills, but we're sending them right back to burned out parents, stressed out teachers, and expecting them to function well. And so that's why it's not working. It's the skill that's lacking with the people around the kids. And so that leads me to my second piece there, the geographical piece that we're going back to is the word trauma. So I specialize in trauma. Trauma is so essential to understand. But what we need to know is that some places won't let me use the word trauma. And I say, okay, that's okay. You know why? Because nobody's going to politicize the word stress. And stress is, again, a brain-body connection. It's how it shows up in our body. It has to do with what the hormones we excrete. All of these things are going on that is very physiological. And when you're overloaded and it affects your daily function, anxiety is physiological as well. So I don't have to talk about all of those things. All I need to do is go back to how do we quiet the mind? How do we find our calm? Because that way we're accessing that part of our brain that we can start making decisions and planning for the next step. And there are skills and tools that we teach people. So going back to what do people need to know? Well, you need to know how your body is actually responding to stress right now. And that's why we show this wheel of reactivity. I love it because it's a visual saying, when you're overloaded, what do you do? And so we show pictures of sleeping too much or maybe too little, or sitting in that meeting just with a blank face, and then sometimes it's running away. Avoidance is huge. A lot of times we avoid the discomfort. We're not really teaching people how to sit in discomfort. I mean, we're doing that in the world of therapy and that's good, but not everybody's learning that. And so it's when you're uncomfortable, you'd like to avoid. So one of the other pieces I teach often is just picture the ladder of conflicts. So if you're at the bottom and you're uncomfortable, the most important thing we have to do is get back and connect it into our bodies. How is that showing up? What do I feel like? Am I clenching my fists? Is my jaw tightening up? Does my chest hurt? Do I feel nauseous? There's a nerve that goes from our brain into our stomach. I mean, it's all physiological. It's there for a reason. So just pay attention. But Mike, we're so busy. But we need to slow down our rate of speech, and just truly be in that present moment and think, what's going on? What is my next step? We have to teach kids and adults how to do that. And more importantly, give them permission to do that.
Right. And space.
Yeah.
And
Space.
leaders learning the skill for themselves, but also enabling space for others to have that. I was talking yesterday to an organization, and we were talking about overuse of words. So for example, we are deeply passionate about self-awareness and self-care, and knowing where you are and having that self-awareness of where I am. I'm going to be honest with myself, and here's where I am. And then therefore, here's a plan I could put in place to adjust. But the world also cannot allow us to say, over the next 3 months, I'm going to improve my self-care and do nothing else, right? Because the world keeps coming at us personally, professionally. So the conversation yesterday with someone was, what's the right amount of space I should give my team around the phrase of self-care or well-being or mental health awareness, and then the space to de-stress and find time. And then where can it be abused, right? That you could say, well, this week, canceling it all because in the name of self-care, which we say, like, if that's really what's needed, hopefully there are workplaces that allow you to take a day off and say, like, I'm going to create some space. I'm going to take an extra day next week just to go find myself in the woods or go walk some trails or exercise or listen to some great music and meditate or gratitude journal. But in theory, we have to integrate those habits into our daily lives and manage the things that are coming at us, possibly create boundaries. But so the question is, as a leader, how do I create appropriate space for that to take place? I want to encourage you to reach out to us via LinkedIn. If you don't follow myself or our organization, Talent Magnet Institute, I encourage you to click follow, send me a LinkedIn invitation. Let's connect and take conversations to a next level.
I think that anytime it's forced on somebody, they push back. And so it's got to be part of the culture, like you're saying. It's got to be things that we integrate into our everyday practice that is digestible, but also that we get to decide what that is. And that's why people are sick of the words sometimes, different words, self-care, self-management. And that's why they become buzzwords, because they get overused. Trauma gets overused. But they're still so very important. So when we impose it on somebody, that's when they push back and they don't feel like they're valued or heard. The best thing you can do is give them a voice. How would you like to spend your time? You have 1 hour. I'm not going to force you to do group work. I'm not going to force you to do an energizer. Some people, like when I do energizers, I always say, you can actually participate, listen to your body. Do you want to sit or stand? Do you want to engage in this? Or do you want to still participate, but as an observer? And so when we try to force people and impose what we want them to do, what we think self-care should be, then there's going to be pushback no matter what, because nobody has agency over that. And so people are really wanting space to talk to each other and have time to get their work done. So I don't know that there's an actual time. It's the conversation. It's part of culture.
Mm-hmm. So the other frame up that I'd like to do, and in the workplace, we have team that we need to execute against the plan, right? That here's what needs to happen from a production standpoint, that so the product goes out the door or the service gets delivered with quality by this time frame. Similarly to the classroom, as the teacher, I need to accomplish these things this week on my learning curriculum. And you may have a student who's like, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to, for the company leaders that are listening, have you ever had an employee who's like, nope, I'm not going to run this production line at this time because I'm not having the best of the day. You may have a student who's like, I'm not even going to look at you as my teacher. I'm going to stare at the wall and not pay attention. How do I, as a teacher, as a leader, as the individual influencing the behavior, how do I manage that? And how do I get them back onto the productivity track in the name of self-care and stress and anxiety and things that they're dealing with?
Yeah. Well, that response is a message. It's a communication piece. It's something else is going on. And more importantly, we need to look for patterns of behavior. So is that their typical pattern? Because what is that? How do we disrupt that pattern? Or maybe it's not our job to disrupt the pattern. It's just having the conversation with genuine interest in what's going on underneath it all. And that's what we miss. So if we go to this person or this student and say, well, you have to do this. Are we building the connection with them? Are we really trying to get what's going on for long-term change? No. And so it depends. It depends on what your goal is. Is your goal to force your kid to get their shoes and coat on and get out the door? to get to school on time, that's a different thing. But if there's a student sitting in front of me saying, I'm not doing my work, or their body language is saying, I'm not going to do this, because then has that happened before? Let's use history. What has happened before? I actually just wrote something on this yesterday. Somebody asked me about de-escalation strategies. And I said, well, that's really tough to just give you a blanket statement. We've got some investigation to do here. But in those situations, sometimes you can do it very quickly because we're in a rapidly changing environment, or we have time to invest in that person. But I would argue that oftentimes we don't have time. So ask quick questions. Just get your mindset. We have frameworks in this book for all kinds of situations for this reason. But you can always go back to the basics. Calm your mind, slow down your rate of speech, slow down, and ask the person, what's going on? How can I help you? And if nothing else, ask them, what do you need? And how can I help you get that?
And when you were sharing earlier about you spent so much time working with the student, realizing that student goes back into the household, the community, of which the world is learning this skill. I mean, how many times do we both hear, you heard yesterday from an organization that said, give me all of your secrets to my de-escalation strategy. That may not be exactly what was asked, but they'll come to us and say, I need to build trust with my team. What one, I'm going to say one because it has been asked before, but what, half-day workshop could you do to help build trust with our team? And the answer is, that's not possible.
No.
You can start the journey. You can start to ask the question, but it's going to take time. The beautiful thing is the amazing educators who have received this type of training and skill development, they know that. So it looks like they're managing their class experience even more effectively. A great leader, it may look like that they're just natural. No, they probably work specifically on this so that it looks more seamless. How can that kid, that team member, walk into that classroom and not have the behavior problems? Because the trust is built in that classroom.
That's exactly right. And you know what those great leaders are, is they're excellent listeners. And that is a skill. That's the best skill I ever learned as a therapist. And I still need to work at it. But that was the best skill I learned as a therapist, is to be a good listener and an empathetic listener. That's a skill.
It's amazing to me, the individuals that all of us listening can think about of when that teacher was so mean to you because they confronted you with something you really need to hear.
Mm.
Right. And I say mean to you because that's how it felt at the time. And I constantly relate back and forth, Charlie, when you and I are talking all the time, because it's what you're doing and where you're investing time in the education space. It is 100% transferable skill to any other environment, because it's all about relationship building and personal self-awareness. And that takes time. That takes decades for some, hopefully everyone figures it out at some point, but some people stay blind to the self-awareness. We talked about that in a recent episode with Don Frericks on Leadership 360s and the power of self-awareness. And it takes people intentional effort, and they don't always want to click on the lens to say, oh, now I see what I'm doing, how it's impacting me and those around me. But there's so much relatable skill for those listening, like between what's being managed in a class and education environment and what's being managed in a work environment, a nonprofit environment, a home environment. There were things that you were just sharing that kind of got me like, oh, even with my own children, the teachers who have said what Miss Gregory did to me when she was like, hey, I know you're not giving me enough. And I know, because I see these things. She loved my writing. And I see these things you're doing, and then I see how you're showing up here, and it's not making you look good, and it's not going to help you get where you want to go. And I see that happening even with teachers within my own children's lives, where they're like, hey, I need to give you some feedback. You're not going to like the feedback I'm going to give you, but you need to hear it. And at some point, we finally hear it. And then it's like these light bulbs go off, the veil lifts, the clarity's created of, oh, that's why I respond the way I respond. That's what you really meant when you said that. Once you sit me down, the difference is when a teacher sits a student down, the emotion should be, I'm sitting you down because I really care. I care about you. I believe in you. And that's part of the skill that you're giving the individuals that you're working with.
Yes.
To have that capacity.
It is building capacity in that. And what it does, it builds confidence. So that confident teacher now goes in and can lead that classroom. They're not thinking about what happens if that kid acts out, I don't know what to do. It's not about that anymore. I mean, when I got skilled, I was confident. And that wasn't a problem for me. And it doesn't mean kids didn't act out, because they did. But I never walked into my classroom because it wasn't my classroom, it was our classroom. And we had relationships, and I could tell when that one kid was starting to get a little squirrely over there. So I would stop the whole class and do what I call a rapid reset to shift the energy and realize that we need to be playful, realize that there is a time and place for everything, but we get to have leadership over our kids and our really ourselves. And kids feed off of that. They know, everybody knows that kids, they know when you're in a bad mood. They know when something's wrong. And when you have a great relationship with them, they'll come and say, are you okay today? Instead of backing away from you. That's the kind of relationship. And so when we are skilled, I wasn't always skilled. I have a lot of stories of where I messed up early in my teaching career, but I became a teacher in which some of those, quote unquote, those kids were put into my class because the school counselor I was working with, she knew I could handle that, or knew I was very welcoming of that. And that was the difference. And I always tell people, it's not because I'm awesome. It's because I became skilled, and then I became confident. And so I wasn't worried about what the kids were going to do. I was just worried about the kid.
And that's really a part of what you've built out, is this framework around skill development that can give you that sense of knowledge, understanding, confidence, reduce anxiety, reduce stressors because of self-awareness and all of those things. Can you share a little bit more about the skill development journey you've been on, and maybe one or two that you believe are having some of the most profound impacts early on?
Yeah, I mean, I keep going back to the story spiral. Oh my goodness. We use this so much because we tell ourselves stories all the time that are based on lies. They're not even true. But it's kind of like that example I use when you're walking down the hall and you see a colleague and you pass by and you're like, hey, how you doing? And they don't acknowledge you at all. And in your head, you're telling yourself, wow, what did I do? Like, what? They're mad at me. Oh my gosh. And so you go into this story spiral. What did I do wrong? Now you're worried because we know that our thoughts and feelings are connected, and then our behaviors are. So if we're uncomfortable around that person, we might start avoiding them, and then they might avoid us. And so we just go into this spiral. But it really comes down to the language that we're using. We have this negative self-talk. Often it's actually a way that our brain functions. We're going to default to negativity. So we need to catch that and bring it back to reality. Well, what's really going on here? What is really happening? That person was probably in their own head for their own reason, had nothing to do with me. So then I can base my next move or my thoughts or my behavior on reality, and just give people grace and space to live their life and have their own thoughts. And it has nothing to do with me, most likely. If it does, we're going to handle it. Like, I can handle that. But that is one. The story spiral is one. And another one is about, we talked about boundaries earlier. People are sick of the word boundaries, but because they don't know what to do with it. So I talk in terms of, what are our limits? How do you know when you've reached your limit? You can't do anything about a boundary unless you know yourself so well that you've noticed you've reached your limit. Well, we can reach our limit in a relationship. We call it relationship reciprocity, and it's not about reciprocity with the other person at all. It's all within ourselves. It's, how do we know when we've given too much? And how do we know when we've taken too much from the other person or from a situation? Often it's a person. And then how do we work through that? Well, if you haven't worked through that in your mind and processed it, then you're just going to feel in that state of chaos. So the framework is all about how do we acquire these skills in a fast-paced environment? How do we integrate it into what we're already doing? How do I notice when I'm in the midst of those high demands in my classroom, in my office, leading a company, leading a PTA meeting? How do I stop and notice that that's what I need is to now implement that? That's the practice part. I mean, we can become proficient without having to get all the way to a therapy session to do that. That's where this came from, Mike. I mean,
Wow.
I'm sitting there thinking, why do I have to wait for people to come to me to a therapy session to reach that point where we could be equipping teachers who are coming into the system in the first place? I mean, I'm working with universities and colleges throughout the country too, to educate their teachers, to give them those skills so they're not going into those classrooms with burned out teachers who are hosting them, for crying out loud. We've got to start at the beginning there. So it does. The skills can be acquired by honestly anybody, and they can be applied to their profession or their personal lives. And it's just an easy way to remember to do it. It's so simplified. I teach it to students too.
Part of the kind of the heartbeat, the heart center of what you do, the heart center of what we do collectively now, but is what drew us close together.
Yeah.
Of like, we know that everything we do, it's not about simply increasing company or organization performance, because that's what kind of has gotten a lot of our world here in the first place. Right? Like, we believe that so much focus on performance and output, you lose track of the humans that are doing it. So our goal is that everything we do, we're impacting not just the environment you're in, but the environment you live, right? It should transcend. Everything you learn should transcend. Everything that student or child learns should transcend. Ideally, they're then influencing up to their own parents and to their own guardians that are supporting them. That if teachers can reach not only into the student's life, but into the families that make up the ecosystem of a school district, right? My wife and I were really involved in parental engagement strategies with schools. And it led us to meeting an organization down in Tampa that had chapters, 1,500 chapters around the United States. We ended up meeting other chapter captains that were just basically all like us, most volunteers. They were families that said, you know what, I think as an active parental unit, we could go support and get other active parental units involved in schools. And we would have literally principals and teachers who would get excited about the days we were meeting in their cafeterias, because we'd have a cafeteria of 380 moms or 272 dads showing up in cafeterias all over the United States, like saying, basically carrying the cheerleading flag that we're here to be involved in the student's life. You know, everything from great grandpas to uncles to moms to sisters to brothers. We would have brothers who were at the high school coming into the elementary school for that morning to support their sibling, because that mattered, right? So we know the ecosystem, and we would always joke you'd meet people out in the community who would then be like, hey, Charlie, how are you? It was great to be with you 3 weeks ago. Wasn't that a great session? So you're not just influencing the student family unit or the school, you're influencing the community experience. Now you have friendships with people who you may have kept your head down because you didn't know them, to like, oh my gosh, it's great to see you. So the skills we're developing in our work together transcends everything. It transcends borders, geographies, whatever structure you have, because these are just life skills. Personal life skills.
So one of the hardest parts about podcasting is the moment you stop talking. I mean, think about it. The majority of the work that you probably put into creating a podcast is in the editing phase. So what if you didn't have to do the editing phase? Here at the Cincinnati Podcast Studio, we help you just come in and talk. We do all the rest. We have the cameras, we have the microphones, we have the lights, and then we have the editing tools to create the perfect content out of your podcast. Not only do you get the full podcast in video and audio, you also get short form content that you can use across all of your pages in social media. So if you want to learn more, go to cincinnatipodcaststudio.com/tour to learn more and schedule your tour with us today.
Yes. And it can bring us so much more joy. I mean, it's not just about the performance, like you said. I mean, it will actually level up your performance.
It'll enhance your performance.
It certainly will, because you'll feel more energized. I mean, it just alleviates a lot of that negative energy, and it gives you that freedom to just kind of explore things and without the weight that you were carrying before. That's what I love to see. That's why that's exciting. And then you get to share that with each other. And really, it is about that ecosystem, Mike, because it has to be a shared language. It has to be language that you can talk about together and go home and just share the burden of raising kids, not just on one person or one family system. It's on everybody. I mean, when we walk out in the community and we see children on the street, I mean, we got to make eye contact with them and smile and say hi, and acknowledge them. You might be the first person that they really felt important to that day. I mean, it is a community piece that we are always building. But I will go back to one thing too, is for a company, you are investing in human capital. That is the investment, because we do have to think of that too. It is an investment of time, funding, all of it.
And the performance. We talk often about the innovation, that when you create a culture of trust and care and intentional leadership, you tend to be a more innovative environment. You tend to be a higher performing organization. You tend to be, when your culture is defined as building into those that you have the pleasure of employing, your culture tends to be radically higher in terms of positivity and in terms of performance. So the skills, it's not like we don't, at the end of the day, we shift the focus to the individuals and the team and the people that make up the environment, because that focus of the people-centric focus will unlock everything else, right? The teachers who lean in, the school districts. We recently had a school district just get approved for, roughly 9 educators in the unit that are so excited about joining this program that we've launched, that we're bringing to life, taking what you've built and helping bring it to life in a scalability model to be able for all these school districts around the United States to be able to jump in. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the programs that you've built, what we're doing together, and what you hope for the outcomes to be as we build up the Thriving Educator community and network, and as we bring the products and trainings and coaching sessions and experiences to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to it.
But
it's exciting because it's actually so simple. I mean, it's, again, skill building. It came out of these conferences and things that I would attend and share my sessions. So sometimes I'll do a keynote and then I'll follow up with sessions. So I might do my keynotes on thriving under pressure, that chaos to calm in the system. But then I might follow it up with some skill building, and we might do the story spiral and get back into ourselves and how do we show up more energized. Okay. But from that, people kept saying, okay, what's next? Well, I could come in and do a workshop with your staff. Okay, great. That takes a lot of time to set up. And it's a one and done thing. And so it's got to have a longer period of time. And even when I'm working with districts for a year-long project, which is much better, they're still craving more, Mike, because they are such great skills and they need a time and space to connect and build a network together, share ideas. And then they ask for my teaching. So that's where this came from. So I'm doing that. And I get to work with people live once a month and share kind of the theme of the month, because there's a lot that we can cover. There's 2 books. The first book is about the 9 essential skills. One is what we talked about, the relationship reciprocity. There's another one, social plasticity. There's 9 of them. And then I recently wrote this book with Joshua Stamper, and we needed a framework. And it's about, how do I actually get started and lead this? How do I keep a simple framework? And so the great news is that adds up to 12. So every month I get to do a theme. The very first one we're doing in April is our first tenet in the new book, is about considering your environment. And it goes well beyond what you think that is in the classroom. We do look at sensory influences, but there's also, what is the social influence and how are we setting that up? So there's a lot to it. So that is essentially what we're doing, is showing up every month and doing a live teaching, but also they get to ask questions. We do case studies. We do some consultation around that.
Mhm.
And we have a network, a whole community of people coming together, sharing their ideas and thoughts too.
And they get access to the Thriving Educator 9 essential skills,
Yes.
right?
Oh, that's a
With
self-paced
trainings
course
and
with all
curriculum, a
that.
self-paced course.
Yes.
But we're going, what we've learned with our journey with Talent Magnet, that the online learning is certainly a part of it, valued by most, but not all.
Right.
And yet, we still need the one-on-one interaction. We need the ability to ask questions, to engage and dialogue around what I'm learning. So the 9 essential skills are a part of the offering, but we're building out the community. You're going to be there live. You're going to be providing coaching and insight. The community will be able to engage with one another and share insights and tips and really build a trusted, almost like we use the word cohort a lot. It'll be like, I'm in this cohort with all these amazing educators who want to thrive in the great work we do. And I learned something new this week that I didn't know before because of this experience that someone shared on the community platform that I'm a part of being a part of the Thriving Educator program. So many of you may have seen our promotion around this. We encourage you to join it, to share it, to send it to your local school district. If you're listening and you're not in education, send it to your local school district, because this will have profound impact on the families and the communities that are inside your immediate circles.
Absolutely. And then there are tons of resources too. I mean, part of the work that I get to do is with school counselors in connecting them. They are really like the glue of the school. I mean, they're doing so much. And so they often feel like they're on an island. So I get to create these just resources. There's, or for the school mental health team, because there's team members who get together and they don't know really what to do. And so we've got a ton of resources for them as well. But it really is for that school leader. So, and I say that very openly because teachers are leaders. The teacher leader who wants to make this change and acquire the skills, they want to be a part of this. School counselors want to be a part of this. Sometimes school-based therapists want to be a part of this. Oftentimes, actually, social workers, assistant principals, district leaders, and superintendents are interested in this as well, because what it does, it gives them the perspective, and every month is a theme. So there's so much that we can share and grow with. It's a good annual, it lasts throughout the whole year. They have access to those resources in that course, but then the live. And so there's just so much that we get to do in here. And it was born out of what they were asking for. And so I'm just so grateful that you and I could get together and do
Absolutely.
this and give it to them, give them what they need.
We referenced earlier speaking at conferences. What are the interactions like post delivery of the message when educators come up to you to thank you for being there? What are you hearing from them in terms of the emotion of what your speech drove and the behavior or the comments that it gains from them?
Yeah. Recently in New York City, oh my goodness, I had someone come to me afterwards, and she was, I think, a social worker, a school-based social worker. She was. And she said, "Thank you so much for validating that I can't use the term SEL, or that's social emotional learning, in my district. They don't understand, but I feel so silenced. So thank you for acknowledging that." Like, that is so simple, because there are so many people trying to make changes, but they feel like they can't talk about certain areas. And sometimes mental health, they know it is important, or suicide has happened in their community and they feel like they don't know what to do or can't even talk about it or say the word. And so it opens up a space to have the conversation and realize, yeah, we can do this. And by the way, we're doing this globally. So join us, because we'll give you the skills and tools and confidence to go back and share what you know.
Yeah. And I know we always want teams to come together and experience something together, but part of how we designed this was that we also believe that, like, there's maybe a leader who's going to be the force field to, like, jump in, do it, and then bring it back to their district and then warm up the district with that. So from an individual who's sitting here listening going, I would like to do some PD and I'd like for it to be around this topic and I'm required to do it as a part of my education, how can they approach joining just themselves And then what does it look like for a team or a district to bring, or a school system to bring a whole group of learners in together?
Yeah, and oftentimes it does start with that individual, and they come on, they sign up. There's a lot of funding options for you. Sometimes you get it covered in just a lot of different ways. And because you can be the leader of this in your school and you get a lot of resources, oftentimes your principal will let you do that and they'll cover it for you. So you come in, you get to access the course immediately. All the modules are there. There are 10 of them. You get all of the materials. You can immediately start acquiring those skills. And then you can show up in the community. And it is a professional learning community. I mean, it's just one outside of your district, but it is a global professional learning community. So it's a huge benefit. And then the team approach, this is often what happens. I mean, we have people saying, I want to choose a team from each school in this district. How do we do that? Well, you just get in touch with us and ask for that, and we'll support that. Come in and you'll learn about it, but you'll also get some guidance on how to take this back to your school as a team.
And then we'll be listening to feedback, right? Because that's what this is all about. This is all about you. And every aspect of what we do at Talent Magnet Institute is all about you. Your greatest ideas should be designed for the users and the listeners and the subscribers. And that's what we're doing in this area of being unconventional leaders and how we show up every day. And I want to lead differently. That's why you're listening to this episode, because you want to do something different that others around you may not be doing or may not have received the insight and education to do. And we hope you gain something here and then share this with others so they then get on the journey that you've been on. But in that, we're going to be listening in the community for topics that come up. So we're having the 12 sessions. We certainly will learn after the first few of, okay, we think we were going to go here for session 4, but based on this, we may want to bring a little bit more value here or provide resources. You have so many powerful, simple, part of your gift is making things simple. It's certainly not mine. Right? So everybody who knows me knows, if Sipple's in the room, he's going to create a lot of words and thoughts, and that's part of the visionary in me. But simplicity, being able to say, all right, here's what we're hearing from the educators. Here's a tool that could help solve that problem that's really simple.
Yeah, it can be.
It can be.
It really can be.
Yeah.
And sometimes people just need to think about it a little differently. They just need to shift how they think. And that's what's happening a lot with student behavior issues is they often think of, gosh, just fix this kid, get them out of my classroom and bring them back when they're better or when they're going to function better. And really it's about how do we capture the need of that kid? What different questions can we ask, and how do we shift our perspective to respond more effectively to that child and their need? And that is what's going to elevate education truly long-term.
So is there something we can provide our listeners today that are tuning in, a resource to kind of get them started and to display and show this journey we could help take them on? What resource do you think we should provide our listeners?
Oh boy, we've got a lot of those, don't we, Mike? I always think that there's a couple. So if anybody's ever saw me, if they've ever seen me talk before, I do these rapid resets, and it's just so easy just to implement into a meeting or a classroom, but it can shift the energy. It's a great distractor for that kid that you're worried about in your class. And how do you manage your own mental health and wellness? By these simple little tools. So we could give them the rapid resets. What I really love giving people who are listening now, who are still here, and they're like, I really want to do this, is the school mental health audit. And in it, it's a 13-page document, and there's some checklists in there to look at what's the culture of our school like, and it breaks it down specifically. What are we doing about this protocol or this protocol? And it's really very simple. It has to be, Mike. If it's not simple, people will not remember how to do it, and they won't do it. So that is another tool that I like to give. And I will say this other thing too, is when we address issues, it's always about how do we do this together to make it more beneficial to the kid? How do we communicate more effectively? So we'll guide you through all of that. But these tools they're already available. We'll just give this to them to get started.
Yeah, so we'll provide you, as a part of the show notes, a couple of links that you can download these resources to see how simple and powerfully effective these resources will be, just to make it as an offer. And again, if you are listening and you're like, thank you, I need to learn more, we're available, we're easily accessible to answer questions, to engage. You might be sitting on the fence and like, I've been watching the campaign, I'm ready to join. This helped me jump over, right? I'm ready to go. Let's do this. Or you may say, you know what, not for me, but there is a couple friends in my life that are family members, colleagues, neighbors that could probably really benefit from this. We're surrounded by educators. We all are, because our part of our ecosystem and design of our world is educators. And there may be individuals at all aspects of this that you're like, you know what? I have a friend who's a school counselor who talks to me about this all the time. I have a friend who's a retired superintendent who mentors current superintendents that I know this is something she or he would want access to. So we'll make sure we provide that. The other, I would like to have you share a little bit about the language of behavior and what led to this book, The Framework to Elevate Student Success, and what you're hoping comes out of the impact of this writing with Joshua Stamper and yourself.
Yeah, well, he came to me with that. He had already had the idea of the language of behavior because he's a former administrator who now does keynote speaking and has work that he does with leadership development and all that too. And he said, I'm missing a part of it. And I think you can fill that. He and I had connected through our podcasts. And so we needed something that was really simple. That's my theme, is to go back and give to anybody who wants to kickstart a plan, but in just 3 simple steps. That could either be a teacher in their own classroom. How do I make my classroom more manageable? How do I reduce behaviors? How do I use this from a preventative point of view? And I want to learn a little bit more about brain development and what the behavior is coming from, or what's the function of behavior. What do I do with it? Okay, so they've already kind of made that decision. So this gives the framework, and it also gives some other extended tools for them. It's very practical. After every chapter, Mike, we give strategies. It's an actionable step that you can take now, because they got to be able to do something from reading that chapter. So that's what that is. And then also it's something long-term that we want to help them develop their own teams. I mean, if you're going to have sustainable change, you have to be able to develop your own team. And so there's a team in there that we reference called the Relationship Action Team. And it's about how to look at behavior differently in our schools and organizations. That could also be a family system, but any organizations working with kids is helpful. And how do we address that differently instead of suspension and isolating measures, punitive measures that they're just not working? So how do we do it differently? So that's a lot. There's a lot more too, but that's why we're so excited. You can imagine a lot of people are looking for this tool.
Absolutely. And will Joshua be joining you on some of the webinars or experiences in the Thriving Educator platform?
Absolutely. He's going to be there every time I'm teaching. He's going to be behind the scenes in case I need something and I mess up. And he's going to be managing the Q&A session that immediately follows, where people get to ask the questions one-on-one and into the group. And then he and I are going to do some pop-up sessions. He's going to be a guest. He's got some great insight to share. So we're going to do a webinar on April 29th. And that's going to showcase what we're doing in Thriving Educator, but also sharing some of our tools and strategies. And there's going to be a lot more from Josh. Trust me, he's got some good stuff to share.
That's
We'll be
great.
doing it together.
And is the webinar for members only, or can anyone attend the webinar?
Anybody can attend. There's always free resources. There's always new tools and strategies. And it gives you some insight in what will I actually get out of this? What can I do next? That's the question everybody has is, I want more. How do I get it? That's what this is.
Yeah, and I'm sure we will try, for those who pick up and listen to this episode after the webinar date, there's material available. There'll be some access possibly to even that episode or that webinar as a resource that will create some type of evergreen experience. If you're like, oh man, I missed that date, there will also be another one, right? There's things that we do, there's things that Charlie does that we want to keep bringing you great content, great material to inspire and lift change as you're on your journey to unlock human potential.
Absolutely.
Charlie, what parting words do we want to leave with those who tuned in through this episode around the work that we're doing with Thriving Educator?
Well, let's go back to hope. I mean, it's there. People can truly find more joy professionally and personally in their lives if they just learn to shift perspective and learn to kind of understand how when they show up, it gets to be their own journey. Nobody has to impose it on them. They just have to learn a little bit more about themselves and how that they can do that. But it's absolutely possible.
Well, thank you for your partnership. I'm excited about what the future entails and where this is going to take us. We want to thank all of you for joining this week's episode of the Unconventional Leadership Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the discussion with Charle Peck and the work that we're doing with Thriving Educator. We want to thank the Cincinnati Podcast Studio for all that they do each and every week to bring this to you live. We look forward to your interactions, your comments. One of the things you could help us with is sharing to get this word out. So please share this episode with people throughout your network and community and family that are in the education space. We're so excited to be going down this path for educators to bring powerful material to help them unlock their human potential and think about the cascading effect that it has on our world around us with the great students that they work with and have the opportunity to teach. So thank you for being a part of this week's episode, and we look forward to our next conversation.